Okay, we'll make a start. Thanks so much for joining me for this talk. I'm going to be talking about AI and how it's changing user behavior on websites and what we're seeing from the data that we analyze. Super quick intro to myself. My name is Will. I'm the founder and managing director of an agency called Webbooks. We are here exhibiting today. We're just over there in the middle aisle. And we help our clients build and maintain websites and run digital marketing campaigns to get the best possible performance. Founded it back in 2008, so we're 17 years into this. And over that time, we've seen a heck of a lot of change within the industry, but also we've analysed a heck of a lot of data. And it's in light of that we're presenting these 5 insights today. So we are recording today's talk. So if you want a copy of that recording, just come and grab me afterwards and we can send you a copy. And also just to kind of say up front, we're going to move through this really quickly. You can't forget the timer. So I've only got 20 minutes. So I'm going to rush through this. But if you want a deep dive into a particular area afterwards, just come and grab me at the stand. So here we go, right? Most websites, they're not failing because of bad design or lack of effort or maybe poor technology. Actually, they're struggling because user behavior has changed and most websites have just not kept up with that change. Now, of course, AI is a big part of that. It has changed how we search, how we find information, what we expect from using these kind of systems. And ultimately, what that means is what worked on your website 12, 18 months ago might not actually work nowadays. So in this session, I'm going to show you 5 insights and 5 gaps really, where ultimately user behavior has changed and your website might not have actually kept up. So today, these are going to be 5 shifts that I share with you, and they're areas where we feel user expectations have accelerated, but ultimately websites have just not kept up at the same pace. So first shift we're seeing is around clarity and the speed of understanding, okay? So users don't explore websites the same as they used to. If you cast your mind back a few years ago, users would browse around a website, click around on average 3, 4, 5 pages to find the information that they're looking for. They might give you 30 seconds to a minute and a half of their time to do that. That is just not the case anymore. People land on your website and they expect to understand what it is that you do, what you stand for, and the outcome for them or the next step for them within seconds. So we see this time and time again from often the audits that we undertake, that you're making people think when they land on your website. They've got to work out what it is that you do and the benefit for them. And actually when they stop and have to work that out for themselves, what does that mean? They leave the site. They're not going to hang around long enough for that. Often this is caused by maybe your messaging not being clear about what it is that you provide, or maybe the call to actions aren't clear, or maybe you just go on about services rather than the benefits to your clients. And the key information is often buried within navigation upon navigation or 3, 4, 5 clicks away from them. And the result of this is people don't stick around long enough to actually convert. Now, this is not just a user experience issue. This has a commercial impact on your business. Because if the users don't get it within a few seconds, they're going to leave. They've got to be able to digest what it is that you do and the benefits of using your service within seconds. And ultimately, this leads to people landing on your site, not getting it and leaving, which is a waste of your ad spend. It's driving lower engagement and fewer inquiries into the business. So you're not losing potentially bad traffic, you're actually losing good traffic. This could be traffic that have landed on your site with good intention, but they're just not converting. So what can we do about this? Well, we've got to fix the first 10 seconds. When someone lands on your website, within 10 seconds, they need to understand what it is that you do, who you do it for, and why that matters. You need to think about what are the outcomes or the benefits to your users and shy away from internal language and terminology. Ultimately, try and remove the friction and allow people to find information more easily. Secondly, you can also help users find the information that they're looking for. Now, of course, AI starts to play a role here because people are used to finding information by natural language. They might go to ChatGPT and they might have a conversation with that LLM and find the information they're looking for. And it's now that you can bring that experience through to your site as well. So by implementing an AI-driven search, you can allow people to find content on your website far easier and through more conversational language rather than the traditional approach of just keywords. So again, a big thing to reduce that friction and get people to the information that they're looking for much more quickly. Now, the second shift we're seeing is around relevance. Users no longer expect the same experience. We're all different. We all have different interests and preferences, technical ability, and so on. And therefore, we shouldn't be providing them a generic website experience. So think about the experiences that you're used to day to day. You might use Amazon, which tailors product recommendations. You might use Netflix, which tailors what you want to watch, and so on. All of this is becoming our day-to-day norm, and ultimately, users' expectations are expecting that level of personalization. However, they land on your website, which is static, and it's just built for one user persona, and it doesn't change regardless of what people do on the site. Now that becomes a cumbersome experience because actually it's not built for them. And even if your design is good, the experience feels flat. Now this has a direct impact on performance, again, because actually if your messaging is not relevant, users don't engage, they don't build the trust with you, and they're less likely to take action, which is ultimately what we want them on the site to do. Now this is especially important for paid traffic, for campaigns, different audience segments, where they're coming to your site and you know how they've come to your site. We might even know what they've searched. We know what they're interested in. At that point, we've got enough information to at least start tailoring messaging. Now, we always say relevance beats a redesign. One of the biggest misconceptions we see is that improving performance of a website just requires a full rebuild. Now, don't get me wrong, it might. But actually, in a lot of instances, it doesn't require a full rebuild. It requires a rethink on how you tailor the experience of the site for each individual user. Biggest gains often come from making content more relevant. So think about who's landing on your site and how we can increase the relevance of that content. So some actions off the back of this. What could we do? Well, let's start with some light personalization, okay? So you don't need to jump straight into really complex AI setups, okay? That is a future goal, okay? Let's start with baby steps. So we know that they've come from an email marketing campaign which talked about a specific problem or service or solution. Well, let's make sure they go to a landing page and let's tailor the content on that landing page to what we know about that user. Because after all, they're probably in our CRM and we know the company they're from, their interests and so on. Or we know they've come from a PPC campaign, they've searched a particular keyword, they've come through. Again, let's tailor the messaging to make sure that it's as relevant as it can be. The other thing you can do is start to adjust your call to actions. If we know they've landed on your site for the first time, why are we throwing straight under their nose, buy now, buy now, buy now? It's just too early, too soon, okay? So we need to think about the journey. Have they landed on our site before? Do we know them? Do we not know them? And adjust accordingly. And these changes have a really big impact. Secondly, of course, AI makes this scalable, okay? So this is where really AI starts to become really powerful for your website because it allows you to segment users in real time, adapt content dynamically, and continuously improve based on user behavior. So long gone are the days where you have to do this manually. AI could be adjusting the content on your site in real time based on what we know about that user. And as they browse through your site and we build up more data about their interests, it gets better and better. Okay, the third shift is around effort, okay? So users today have very little tolerance to friction, okay? So if something feels slow, confusing, or difficult, they're not going to push through that barrier. Ultimately, they just leave, okay? So there's a clear behavior shift here where before they might hang around and they might try and find the information, But actually now, 2026, they're not going to do that, okay? Now, AI tools have trained users ultimately to expect more immediate responses. So we want information at our fingertips, we want it fast, and we don't want to work things out. Now, obviously this is a generalization, but this is what the data is saying. So this now becomes the benchmark for your website experience, not your competitors. When someone lands on your website, they're not saying, oh, do you know what, the competitor's website was just much better. They're comparing you to what they use day in, day out. So searching on Amazon, finding that film on Netflix, that's their expectation level, not your competitor's website. So this has a commercial impact once again, because ultimately we're losing conversions at the bottom of the funnel because there's this friction in place. Not because users aren't necessarily interested in what you have to offer or what you want to talk about, but actually because the journey just slows them down. They just can't find it quick enough. So we regularly see in some of our audits, long and confusing forms, unclear next steps, and too many clicks to what you want to view or find out more about. And ultimately, this just creates more and more friction and more drop-offs. Now, with regards to forms, there are ways to kind of improve the performance there. Let me just quickly show you this video. Hopefully it loads. So this is actually integrating with a platform called Apollo. It allows you to integrate into your site, and rather than have a traditional form like this, it switches the form around so you ask for email address first. Once they enter an email address, more often than not, that is found in the Apollo database, and the rest of the information is then populated automatically. So from the user's perspective, they've come onto your site, they've made the decision to inquire, and they just go, I'll pop my email address in. The rest of the information populates, name, company, so on, and then the inquiry is made. We've removed the friction, and guess what? More conversions at the bottom of the funnel. Now, users don't compare you to competitors, they compare you to the best online experiences. I've just shared this, that ultimately you're not being compared against your competitor, you're being compared against experiences like that, experiences on Netflix, Amazon, and so on, because that's what people use day in, day out. So we've got to think about actually how can we make our websites remove the friction, work harder for the business to drive more conversions. So what can we do about this? What are the kind of action points you can take away? Well, first up, focus on the moments that matter most. So think about your inquiry form, maybe some key landing pages, conversion journeys, the documents they might download, the events they might sign up for. Think about these key action points on your website and start to address those one by one. It might be looking at how the forms can be more seamless, like the example I've shown. It could be a range of other things, but they would be the key things to start with. And ask yourself some questions. How many steps does it take to find this information and complete? How many decisions does the user need to make to actually achieve the end result? And where could they get stuck? Now, these are just questions to get you thinking internally, but of course you could be using tools like Clarity, Hotjar, and others to gather this data for you. Second up, of course, you can use AI to remove some of this friction. So what it can do is maybe start to throw a chatbot up when people are struggling on a page. So it can detect people have hesitated, and then it could throw that up in a modal. You could throw a different prompt up. So when we detect hesitation or rage clicks, as they're sometimes called, then we can do something about that. Or we could do guided journeys. Actually say to someone, are you looking for this? And we'll take you there. You can be proactive in getting users to the right information. So this is not about adding more. This is actually about just making the steps easier for them to achieve. Now, the fourth shift is around insight. Most marketing teams that we talk to have more data at their fingertips than ever, but far less clarity on actually what's working and not working on their website. So tools like Google Analytics and Hotjar, Clarity, and lots of all of these other wonderful tools are giving us so much data for us to consume, but they often don't tell us the full picture. So in your marketing reports, you might be sharing with the board or a senior leadership team some of the key marketing stats. But actually, that's just relaying what these platforms are telling you, right? It's just actually saying, this is what we've achieved with little insight into what the data is actually saying. So you could see high bounce rates, drop off on key pages, or low conversion rates, and all of that can be reported back to the business. But actually what they're interested in is, why is this happening and what can we do about it? It's the insight bit that we often miss. So decisions then get based on opinion, or who's got the loudest voice in the room, or who's the decision maker, and how's that going to be pushed through. And the decisions aren't made on data, they're made on opinion or preference. And that's the last thing that you want to be doing. Now, again, this has a commercial impact, because when you're making decisions without using the data and the insight, you're actually going to fix the wrong things. You're going to be looking at probably issues that are non-issues for the users, and progress is slow because you're fighting against opinions and preferences internally, actually where the data could back you up far quicker. Now, the biggest wins come from behavior insight. So what we see consistently is that the biggest wins don't necessarily come from this big redesign, this big project, but it comes from identifying where people are hesitating on the website, or where they get confused, where they drop off. And if we can uncover why those things take place, you will get a far better conversion rate than just saying to the business, we need to rebuild the site from the ground up. Okay? So the shift here is an important one. What can we do about it? Well, first up, move from reporting to understanding. Okay? So start with actually looking at real user sessions. We love Hotjar at Webbox, obviously we're a partner, so that is a great platform that you could start with, okay? So have a look at Hotjar, look at the video recordings of how people are using the website in real scenarios, and start to understand why they're dropping off. Why is there a rage click? Why did they hesitate at that point? Now, of course, we don't want to make a decision based on one user or two. We need to see groups of people who are struggling with the same issue and then start to address that. And ultimately, then you can start to prioritize your fixes based on impact and not opinion. Second up, what you could also do is use AI to accelerate this. So there's no surprise there. So rather than manually reviewing hundreds or thousands of sessions, start to use platforms like Hotjar to analyze thousands of sessions in a blink of an eye, and it will start to pool videos that you need to watch versus the ones which you don't need to watch, and you can start to just be more laser focused on what you should be looking at. It will summarize behavior, it'll highlight key issues that you should be looking at, and surface patterns really quickly. And this is the key thing. It's not about one person struggled, it's why did these 25 people struggle doing the same thing? That's when you need to make a change and you need to act fast. A quick poll, right? So just show of hands. Hands up if you know exactly where you are losing users on your website. Does anyone know exactly where you might be losing people? Okay, so my point made, okay? So ultimately, we've got all of this data, but we're not analyzing it. We're not spending the time to actually review it, to really pinpoint where the pain points are. Now, ultimately, the goal is really simple. We need to know exactly where people are dropping off, where there's friction, and why that's happening, so that we can bring some clarity to our website experiences. Now, in the last minute or two, I'm into the fifth insight, and this is around how websites are managed over time. So the highest performing websites are not just launched and left, they are continuously improved. Now, the problem is that websites are treated like projects, okay? So we go through design, development, testing, launch phases. We launch the website, we pat ourselves on the back and we say, great, that was done. Let's move on to the next project. We need to look at a website more like an app or a piece of software where it does continually update over time, okay? Otherwise, the alternative is we launch it, we leave it, and in 3 years' time, maybe 5 years' time, we say, we got to rebuild. Okay, so we want to get out of that cycle. We need to retrain the business as well to how these projects flow, and they should be looked at as a continuously improving platform. Now, the commercial impact ultimately affects the bottom line, because if your website is stagnant, nothing ever changes and you're never improving it, then what's going to happen? Well, conversion rate stays the same or it declines because user behavior changes, or things are not going to move forward as the business wants. So small issues stay unresolved, opportunities are missed, and guess what? Your competitors are moving forward, okay? So the key thing here is making sure that we're constantly iterating. And we say this internally, performance comes from iteration, not perfection. Do you know what? We all want perfection, I get that. We want the best for our websites and marketing, and we want the best for the business. But actually sometimes iterating quickly and learning from that data is going to be more valuable for you than waiting a long time to reach perfection. So let's get ourselves into this cycle of testing things, pivoting, learning and refining, and we can just keep that going as a continuous cycle. So how can we address this? So we need to build a culture internally of continuous optimization. I've kind of made a little nod to this already, but sometimes the friction is caused internally when the business doesn't buy into this mindset. The business has to realize that your website is something which needs to evolve and needs to move forward, because ultimately your competitors are doing that, but also user behavior changes over time. So we need to build momentum there. Secondly, again, AI can help accelerate with the testing and learning process. So when it comes to testing different variations and doing A/B split testing, or identifying what's going to work better on a page, or continually improving the navigation, all of that can be sped up using AI to make those decisions and look at data and help us there. Of course, it doesn't take over our role, I just want to be really clear, but it can help us move forward a little bit quicker and we can get that momentum going for the business. So to summarize, user behavior has changed, okay? And often user expectations are higher now than ever, patience is lower than ever, and relevance matters more than it ever has. And the question really that we need to ask ourselves is, with all that in mind, has our website stayed up to date with what's changing in the world? Or maybe is there a gap between what users expect and what they experience on your website? Now, if you're not sure exactly where you're losing people on your website, maybe there's some friction points or you're not converting at the rate that you feel you should be, that's where our digital audit comes in. So we're happy to audit a website or a marketing campaign to tell you where there are holes, where you're losing people in that journey, what is creating friction, and how could we potentially remove that friction for you. So either have a scan of that QR code or come and grab us at the stand afterwards, but we'd be really happy to arrange an audit for you to help you drive better performance. But for now, I just want to say a massive thank you for taking the time to listen to this talk. I hope it's been useful and look forward to having some conversations afterwards. Thank you.